Good morning. Welcome to the Unboxing AI weekly webinar series. This time tuning in right from the shop floor at the RSNA. Uh, this is where I am for those of you who are suffering FOMO. That is CARPL's booth getting assembled, and that's what it looks like, bigger than ever before. Pretty exciting. Uh, so as many of you may know, this happens every Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And today we have a very special guest with us, Dr. Georg Lang. Georg is the CTO and co-founder of Contextflow. I think we first met Contextflow in 2018, if I'm not wrong, at RSNA. When the AI theater was maybe 20% or 10% of what it is right now. And Contextflow was one of the earliest companies. And then, we very quickly integrated their solution. When we were all researchers, right, there was very less commercialization of AI happening. So our relationship with Contextflow goes back several years. So yes, but by introduction, Georg is the chief scientist and co-founder at Contextflow. He's a director of the Computational Imaging Research Lab at the Medical University of Vienna. We will certainly talk about Vienna through the course of this conversation. He holds a PhD in computer vision from the Vienna University of Technology and Graz University of Technology. Extremely technical and one of the world leaders. He's a research affiliate at CSAIL, which for those of you who don't know, is the Computer Science and AI Lab at MIT. Georg has worked as a package leader in several EU-funded projects focusing on large-scale medical image retrieval and analysis, which was one of the first products of Contextflow as well, was content-based retrieval. He's a reviewer for several journals, and then his description goes on. So thank you, Georg, for joining today. It's an absolute pleasure, and it's more exciting that we're able to do this with you.
Great.
Just one day before you are to fly here. So amazing.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me, and I'm really grateful for the invitation and looking forward to the conversation. And I appreciate that we know each other for quite a while, being there from the beginning when AI and
Nice.
R were just a couple of small booths.
Correct. So, Georg, taking a step back, like, how does a PhD in computer science, computer vision, go into this whole world of startups?
Mm.
And what is that? What's the story there? And what makes you persevere for such a
Yeah,
long period of time?
yeah, it's a good question. So I think that the story started when I was in the US and I was invited by the medical university to go back and start kind of research lab around machine learning here. And I'm a computer scientist and mathematician, and so of course there was a decision whether I would like to go to a medical school, and I did in the end. I think I really think that was a great decision, because being immersed in the medical world, being immersed directly in the Department of Radiology, and kind of get to know what the real problems are, what the questions are, and also how quickly radiology as a field is advancing, right? It's not something stable where we try to solve a couple of old problems, but radiology itself is moving pretty quickly. And I think we as technology developers and researchers in this field are just, it's very exciting to be close to that development. And so I think the step then towards going for a startup was started with a couple of research projects where we looked into how we can find similar cases in order to kind of support diagnosis, how we can essentially use this incredible amount of data of patients that is used one time and then put into the archive and never to be seen again, but how we could put that to use to help diagnosis. And that basically was the starting point for Contextflow.
So, Georg, tell me more about that. Like in the Austrian, academic ecosystem, how does that transition happen, right? Like, how do you go
Yeah.
from having, say, a funded research project to converting it into a company? Like,
Mm.
what were some of the things that helped?
Yeah. So I think one thing that helped, and I guess that might be an experience also of other startup founders, was that there were incubators. So there are two incubators. One is INITS and one is I2C. And they specifically kind of focus on helping researchers or research teams that have an invention, that have some technology developed at the university to kind of transition that into a startup and that help you with the first couple of steps. I think most importantly that they connect you to others who have done that maybe a couple of years before, right, and can help you with a couple of decisions and with a couple of mostly telling you what's really important to focus on and what's not so important to focus on. And I think like the biggest learning at the beginning was that we were all in kind of development and research mode and like we had after the project finished you have 100 ideas how you can improve the code and the models and everything, and they essentially told us, well, hang on, stop, hands off the keyboard, just spend your next months talking to radiologists and they connected us with radiologists and to figure out what's really the one thing that they value or that they need. And so I think like
And
these are
what
the steps.
year, Georg, what year was this?
That was 2016, so quite a
Oh,
while.
wow. Incredible. Like, what would you have, like, if somebody is trying to do the same thing today, right? If there's a younger, I won't say young, if there's a younger, say professor who moves, from abroad uh, back to here, to Austria or to their home country, right? What advice would you give them? Like, your learnings, like what can they do in maybe half the amount of time, or I don't know, anything you wish you did.
I mean, I think it's really a good idea to have an open eye in your projects what's valuable and also to kind of try in the projects that you're doing to stay close to these connections to clinical researchers, to radiologists or
Mm.
others, because I think a lot of what we do, you can do stuff that is isolated kind of and then have a couple of meetings every month or so with radiologists, but I think really the key is to try to connect as much as possible, also your students and your colleagues and the younger team members, to try to put them in the same room, the technology people and the medical people, so that they can kind of have this continuous exchange. I think that is something that eventually we figured out, but I think that made a big difference in coming up with ideas, right? So I think that's a big
Yes.
driver and still a big source of ideas and also what I personally really enjoy about that work.
So essentially being close to the user, right?
I
Like,
think
and being close to the user from the get-go.
exactly,
Uh,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
because at CARPL, we were till last year housed within India's largest medical imaging facility. So we had an office right there, where we were incubated, and then last year we moved out, and it's very interesting. Like, we're trying to have this structured program where even a QA engineer or anybody has to go spend some amount of time in a clinical environment. Difficult to do because there's always fires to put out, but it's encouraging. I will take your advice, at least
yeah,
for our startup, and hopefully others listening in uh, also take that.
yeah.
So, Georg, prior to sorry, you were saying?
No, 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 it's fine.
Okay. No, I was saying prior to the call, one of the big achievements at Contextflow over the past few weeks has been the getting reimbursement approval for your product, starting with Europe. So, can you walk us through what that
Sure.
exactly is? What's the
Yeah,
product? What's the
yeah,
process?
yeah.
How does that work?
Sure. So basically, the overall product, I'll tell you a bit of context about what the product does, basically. So it's a software that helps you with chest CT analysis and chest CT reporting. And the real goal of the product, and we're getting there, is to be comprehensive for the chest, so that you have that product and then you have what you need in order to read a chest CT. And we start with the lung, and there we kind of tackle the ILD, so kind of difficult disease patterns where people are sometimes struggling to differentiate them, to help putting them together to form a diagnosis and to confirming the diagnosis. and also to track how things change over time, right? And that is important when you're doing treatment, like for example in cancer treatment, to track all of the nodules that are there, all of the masses that are there, see how they react to treatment. But it's also important when you are kind of seeing a patient and trying to see whether they actually might have cancer or not. And the point that is now part of this reimbursement is a technology where we detect nodules in CT data, but then also predict the risk of malignancy for these nodules. And that is great for like a great contribution to the typical management of these patients, because these patients are managed following guidelines that were designed around things like the size of a nodule or the kind of coarse shape of a nodule or the change of a nodule. But these guidelines don't take so much into account kind of the inner, kind of the texture of the model, what we call radiomics, kind of the features that we can get out of the imaging data with algorithms. And so the core of this reimbursement is this detection of the nodules and then predicting the risk of malignancy for a nodule. And that basically can change the course of a patient, because we can suggest, well, that's a low risk nodule where some of the false positive might have led to things like a biopsy that would have been unnecessary, or that some of the patients who might have slipped through and who have a malignant tumor but are not detected following the guidelines, we can kind of lift them up and say, well, look at this nodule again, that's a high risk nodule, and that essentially kind of reduces time to treatment for these patients. So these are the
So,
core.
so who is Georg, the user for the product? Like, does the does the risk profile go into the imaging report, or and who decides, what to do with it, with that
Yeah.
information?
I mean, ultimately, it's still the radiologist who decides, and kind of the user of the software is the radiologist, and they put that into the report, and then that kind of triggers decisions like follow up imaging, follow up PET imaging, follow up biopsy, or kind of longer term follow up procedures. But ultimately, the user is still the radiologist who is using that software in order to kind of improve the decision or the suggestion that is based on the guidelines.
So, like, do biopsy or not biopsy in a sense.
Exactly. That's one of the paths that can follow this initial detection. And it's both, I mean, there is a lot of discussion about lung cancer screening and incidental pulmonary nodules. And it's meant for both. And both are a big factor in radiology, because a lot of people do have nodules in the lung, and it's really the critical thing is to decide if that is a nodule that is dangerous or if it's a nodule that's not dangerous, and you can basically go for a longer follow-up interval.
And essentially, so let it would also be used on patients who are coming in for, say, let's say, I have fever and cough for a while, and my X-ray is not showing anything, or showing something suspicious. My doctor orders a HRCT of the chest, not for nodules, but for, say, just looking for infection. So even in that scan, the incidental AI model, like the incidental nodule detector model, will work. Is that so? It's essentially for all chest CT scans.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly, that's actually the target population for which it works. And I think one thing that we also realized during the first couple of years of the startup is that what you're just saying, well, there is a huge variety of different CT scan types, like with contrast, without contrast, different dose, different resolutions. And so what we learned is that it's really critical to train the algorithms and to validate the algorithms with this wide variety. So what we sometimes see is that, for example, if you design something only for lung cancer screening, it will not handle these incidental pulmonary nodules so well, because just the incidental population might have comorbidities, might have other things that are not normal tissue in the lung, which makes it a bit more difficult. And so we really put a lot of emphasis on putting into the data and the model validation also these cases that really show this real life variability and diversity of the patients in the clinical setting. Hang on, you're muted.
Yeah. No, pretty cool. So, no, that's I think a game changer as far as at least reimbursement for AI is concerned, because that means that, there is some insurer out there, government, private, whatever, who thinks that there is value in these tools, that is, in this case, pure play clinical value, right? Because we are,
Exactly.
productivity, etc., is secondary, and we're putting the patient at the center, which is
Yeah.
very nice.
I think that's
So Georg,
really, sorry, yeah.
go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
No, I wanted to say, like, I think that's one thing that we are also really excited about. Like, there is one thing about kind of efficiency and helping to speed up the reading of a scan and help you to do that quicker. But I think like one big contribution AI can do to radiology is help to increase the quality and kind of add something to things that radiologists do, and not just automate something, but really to add something to that. And I think like that's one of the sets. And I think like this reimbursement now starting is a sign that that's recognized and kind of validated.
Nice. So we're getting in a few questions, Georg. Let's take them.
Mhm.
Both are anonymous. So the first question is, hi Georg, could you enlighten us about the Pixel Pandemonium initiative,
Oh,
which would be
right.
part of ECR?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. So basically, I'll be very quick
Hmm.
about it, but basically, the Pixel Pandemonium initiative is or project will be a demo area at the European Congress of Radiology, which is a huge congress, like comparable to RSNA with I think 40, 50,000 people. And we thought, together with the organizing committee, that it would be really great to showcase new cutting-edge machine learning algorithms in this area, right? So they can come from industry or academics. We wanted to show something that's kind of cooking in the kitchen, so to say, right? Not yet a product, but something that can inspire the radiologists of what might come in the future, and what's in the research stage, what is in the R&D and building stage. And so Pixel Pandemonium we'll have a demo space at ECR. Submission deadline is I think 13th or 14th of December. And so have a look at it. If you have something exciting, please submit. And I'm really looking forward to that. We even got
Oh, wonderful. So,
yeah, no, we even got I think
no,
a
no, go
mascot.
ahead.
So ECR this year is designed around the planet radiology. And we will have a mascot in the scheme. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, wonderful. Nice. So you're saying that anybody who is building some cutting edge kind of tool gets to apply to showcase their solution in the Pixel Pandemonium, and then, there'll be like a selection process of which,
Exactly,
uh,
exactly. There
oh,
is some
nice.
space on the selection process. We are looking for things that are a little bit interactive, right? So not just a
Yeah.
slide deck, but rather something where you can show something and people can interact with it.
Oh, nice. Interesting. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will check it out. This time CARPL is exhibiting at PCR. It's our first time we'll be exhibiting.
Oh,
Uh,
really? It's a
yeah.
really nice
So
venue.
yeah, no, I've been a couple of times, but never got a we never exhibited. So yes, now we'll be there, so that'll be fun. Uh, the next question is, so how difficult was it to get clients to pay for your product?
Right, that's it. That's a good question. So that was also something that during this initial incubator we learned that like you should look if you have something people are prepared to pay it for, right? So not something where people say, well, that's a great idea, or they want to do a project with you, but really something where they say, well, we put down the money because that's the value for us. And I think the key there was really to talk and find out what are the big pain points and where they can kind of, is it time pressure? Are there a couple of things where they feel they would really benefit from having certainty about diagnosis? So in our ILD kind of lung pattern part of the product, that is something where these patterns are tricky to differentiate, right? There are some experts who do it all the time, but there are many radiologists who don't see these patterns very often. And so they really appreciate this certainty in diagnosis. And then there is some speed component, of course, that like a couple of things like quantification you can pick up with this software that you cannot do by hand, like in a good way. And so this combination is basically what it what people then are prepared to pay for. And it's always starting with the radiologists at the centers who then basically say, well, we'd like to have that software, and make their case to the hospital management.
So, Georg, I'm going to go a little off script and ask you something. I don't know, if you have an opinion on it. Like, there's a lot of AI companies, a lot of new companies coming up. And, as I'm sure happens with you, the founders want to talk to us, learn from our experience, all that. And one question that keeps coming up is, should we take strategic investment from, say, companies that can potentially be the largest customers,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's say you're in Europe, and I don't know, somebody like a Unilabs approaches you and says, we'll invest in you, and they can potentially be your biggest customer. Or in general, right? Like taking strategic investment money at the pre-product kind of
Yeah.
stage. The good thing is you have a customer who will give you some money.
Yeah.
uh, you know, I don't know. The bad thing is that that customer is a competitor to all your other customers. So so I don't know if you have an opinion
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
on, because it makes it easier to get paid, but
Yeah.
I don't know how you think about it.
I mean, I think like, so we were not in a situation, so like, and like we at the kind of investor that would kind of limit that in any way. I think overall strategic investors are important, because in our field, you have to partner with lots of different partners in order to get to the radiologists, right? Like there is all the IT that is in the centers that you need to partner with in order to deliver a great, really nicely integrated product, like for example with CARPL, right? So a lot of partnerships are happening if you want to do a startup in this field. We were not ourselves in the situation to have to decide that whether it's a good idea to do it at the very beginning. So my sense is that the things that you have to think about are, sometimes I think a partner is really great, but I think at the same time you have to somehow project what's your market's going to be, right? Like what's your potential in growth, the market that you will be able to deliver to, and think about that. And I think like that is also a conversation you can have with the strategic investors, right? Because I don't think that all of them basically see as the highest priority to have some kind of exclusivity. So I think that's a conversation that I would have with them, and a consideration to take. But I think overall, strategics are important in our field. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. No, as we are hitting time, we've got a couple of questions from Khalid Yunus. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know if you know him. I think he's from SIM. Can Contextflow's AI technology function effectively as a standalone tool for diagnostic analysis, or is it primarily designed to integrate with existing systems like RIS and PACS?
Mm.
Additionally, how does it integrate with established diagnostic platforms like Sectra and position itself within AI marketplaces like CARPL in terms of enhancing diagnostic accuracy and workflow efficiency?
Yeah,
So,
that's a great
do you want to take a shot at it? Yeah.
So I think just quickly, definitely it can be a standalone tool, but we see that radiologists really like it to be integrated. So they want to stay within one system and not kind of switch around between different systems. And so that's why we just see that it's critical to be integrated well, because that's the channel that the radiologists want to happen. And CARPL is a great example of that, because it kind of helps to integrate in different systems into different houses. So it can be a standalone tool. We do that sometimes for research purposes because we have research partnerships, but I think in the radiological routine, the way to go is to be integrated with the systems that are in place at the hospitals.
I think the way we did it here earlier, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where we were calling your viewer through our viewer,
Yeah.
right? So it's a little bit like Inception, like viewer within a viewer within a viewer. But you would have the PAX viewer, and then you'd have CARPL embedded in the PAX viewer, and then you'd have context flow within CARPL. But it seemed to work, right? You could at least, give give radiologists the full experience while not having to, worry too much uh, about how or whether, CARPL will reduce the amount of information that is presented to the user because of that. So
No, I agree.
yeah, that was pretty cool when we did it. Then, Khalid again asks, as someone who pioneered AI applications in mammography over 2 decades ago, wow, I am particularly curious about how Contextflow plans to leverage its expertise in image analysis and AI to potentially enhance breast imaging or other modalities in general. What are your plans, essentially?
Yeah. Oh, that's also a really good question, and a question that we discussed a lot, especially during kind of a little bit then the super early phases, but a little bit later. Like, what's the next step? Should we go deeper into chest imaging, or should we start to branch out and go like we did a lot of work on brain imaging and also looked a little bit into breast imaging, but eventually we decided to kind of do chest really, really well. We recognize that some of these algorithms you definitely can kind of reuse to others, but we just decided let's focus on chest, get chest right, be really comprehensive in chest because that is something that we can offer, and then look for other avenues.
So, Georg, how far is fully autonomous chest CT reporting?
Yeah. So I don't think that we are aiming for fully autonomous, but I think right now the algorithms are very good in kind of pre-filling reports with quantitative values. I think that's also a direction that radiology will go to be more quantitative, which is, I think, really important in terms of helping treatment decisions that need to navigate more and more kind of crowded fields of treatment options. You need something quantitative to do that. So, but to your question, I think like the AI will be able to pre-fill to deliver measurements, but I think ultimately it will always be with the radiologists to look at that and use that in order to do the final report.
And what about, something like, what our friends at Occipit have been able to do with chest X-ray, like fully automated normal reporting. Do you
Yeah,
think that can happen for chest CT?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think so that is a direction that I would look into. And I mean, in part, a little bit like something like that is already happening by basically putting the things that the algorithms see in the CT back to the work list. So that's really something that is practical in real life to see in the work list what is there in the scan and decide to which radiologist to kind of route that because of expertise. So I think like that's a perspective to go for.
Cool. No, that's very, very encouraging. I myself am a big fan of the normal rule out, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just a very effective way of expanding who all you can offer the service to from a screening perspective.
Yeah.
So, Georg, last question that we have, another anonymous attendee. For reimbursement coverage, which countries do you expect this to start with?
Yeah, so this is something that we are really active in Europe, and so we basically expect to start there and like in a couple of countries, but that is something that we would like to tell more about in the next couple of days.
So, and the process is, Georg, that you would need to do this differently with the government of each country, right?
Yeah, so it's a mix of kind of insurances, but also on a country level, kind of policy for insurance and how to kind of organize the reimbursement codes on a country level, and that is heterogeneous in Europe, but that is something that we are working on basically.
No, excellent. Thank you. We are right on time.
Thank you.
So
Thanks a
thank you,
lot for
Georg. See you. I'll see you on Sunday.
yes.
And thank you everybody for joining. I'll give you one last sneak peek of what's happening. I have no idea what I will see when I unblur my screen, but yes, that's just what things look like right now. So wonderful, and thank you so much for joining. Goodbye.
Thanks for having me. See you on Sunday.
Thank you, Georg.
Bye.